Welcome to part 3 of the video series. I'm going to be discussing the true definition of black and why you should never use that word to describe yourself or anything else. And of course, like I said, I'm going to give alternatives to the word black because that color is sacred and of great importance to us. And finally, I'm going to speak about the psychology, just basic psychology of why people call themselves blacks and why they defend using a European word. Just basic psychology, nothing esoteric or extravagant, simple stuff. This video shouldn't take too long because this is basic and simple information that a child can comprehend. The most basic things you must comprehend about the word black is that it has an original definition and it has a secondary definition which contradicts the original definition. Both of these definitions are simply adjectives, and neither the original nor can the secondary definition describe you. Right, as I've proven in part 1, black as an identity is a false identity branded onto you by European colonizers for the simple fact that black is a European word that is not indigenous to Africa, the Americas, Australia, or Asia. You know what I'm saying? This should be reason enough not to use it. Our ancestors never used the word black, and before the 1960s we hated the word black. I'm saying the reason why people use the word black is because their subconscious minds have been colonized and programmed to believe that they are blacks. Now on to the definitions, not just definition but definitions of black. First, the original and true definition of black. I'm going to be reading from Webster's Dictionary of 1849. It says black, adjective, Saxon, black, and Blake, black, pale. Blacian or Blakian, to become pale, to turn white. Black, Swedish, blek, pale, wan, livid. Bleka, to bleach, also to lighten. Dutch, bleak, pale, bleaken, to bleach. German or Germanic, bleach or blake, pale, bleak, blaken or bleachen, to bleach. Danish, blake, bleak, pale, wan, bleak, bleaker, to bleach. It is remarkable that black, bleak, and bleach are all radically one word. The primary sense seems to be pale, wan, or sallow. That is the true definition of black and the oldest and original definition of black. Now I'm going to discuss the definition that we use today, the definition that we have been taught since we were young, the secondary definition, and the definition that makes the word black a contradiction within itself. I'm going to be reading from the online Etymology dictionary to prove that you really don't want to use this word black. Black, adjective, Old English blake, dark. Cognates, Old Norse blackar, dark. Old High German, blah, black. See bleach. The same root produced Old English black, bright, shining, glittering, pale. Black was swart, see swart. According to Old English Dictionary and Middle English, it is often doubtful whether black, blake means black dark or pale, colorless, wan, livid. Blank, adjective, early 13th century, white, pale, colorless. From Old French blank, white, shining. Compare Old Norse black, blackar, Old English blanca, white horse. See bleach. Bleach, verb, Old English bleaken or bleacian, bleach, whiten. From Proto-Germanic blackjan or blackjan, to make white. Old Saxon blek, Old Norse blekar, Dutch bleak. Old High German bleh, German blake, pale. Dutch bleken, German bleaken or bleachen, to bleach. The same root probably produced black. Bleach, noun. Bleach, verb. The Old English noun bleece or bleak meant leprosy. Blako, paleness, and Middle English had bleach or blek, whitening or bleaching agent. Blonde, having fair hair and usually fair skin and light eyes. If you have any form of intelligence, you will realize that the word black is an adjective that describes the pale-skinned European. Black, blank, or blanc, bleak, bleach, and blonde are all the same word. You know what I'm saying? These words are also related to the word albino and albion. Albino, noun, 1777, from Spanish or Portuguese, albino, from Latin albus, white, see alb, used by Portuguese of white spotted African Negroes. Albion, ancient name of England, Old English from Latin, sometimes said to be from the non-Indo-European base Alb, mountain, Latin Alps, Alps, Albania, and Alba, an Irish name for Scotland, but more likely from Latin albus, white, see alb. Alb, noun, late Old English alb, late Latin alba, of albus, white, from pi root albho, white, cognates, Greek alphos, white, leprosy. To further illustrate why you don't want to use the word black and how it's a contradiction, I'm going to read some of the names that mean blackness and pale skinned. This is from 2000names.com. Albane, perhaps a French form of Gaelic Elpane, meaning white. Albinus, Latin family name meaning light albus, white. It is related to the place name Alba, which comes from the Celtic word Albion, used to refer to the whole island of Great Britain. Albus, Latin name derived from the word albus, meaning white, pale-skinned. Same website. Blake, dark or light hair. Dark or light hair or skin. Black, black, and black, white. It can therefore mean either black or white. Alright, I'm on babynames.net. Alright. Blake, Scottish. Dark, dark-haired can also mean the reverse. Fair, pale, Blakeman. Blake, English, fair-haired. Blondel, French, fair-haired, blonde. Alright, I'm on nameslist.org. English names meaning pale-skinned. Alban, white, pale-skinned, blonde. Albion, white, pale-skinned, blonde. Blake, dark-complexioned, pale-skinned, dark, pale, white, dark-haired, black man, pale-skinned, black. So the word black is the same word as blonde, blank, bleached, and is also related to the words albino and albion, right? All of these words are referring to the pale skin, leprosy, albinism, but you so-called African Americans still believe this word describes you, right? I'm saying look up what a contronym is. A contronym is a word that has two definitions that contradict each other. And in my opinion, since the word black is a contronym, or a word with two definitions that contradict each other, I would say that makes this word null and void, invalid. You know what I'm saying? It's a word that cancels its own self out of existence. Every time you hear the word black, right, you should always be visualizing a European or the twins from the Matrix, right? The twins with the dreadlocks. The only black African is an albino African, right? Look at these signs from apartheid South Africa. The translation for whites only is net blanc, which is net black, which means blacks only, right? The European knows that he is the true black, the true blank, and blonde. You know what I'm saying? That's not us. Now I'm going to read from J.A. Rogers' 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, pages 48 and 22. I'm going to have to disagree with a few of the things that Mr. Rogers says. I'm going to explain after I read why I disagree with some of the things he said. Page 22. The most ancient names for so-called black people are Nehesu or Nubian, Ethiopian, and Moor from ancient Egypt, and Negro and Negrita from West Africa. All of the above are native African words. Negro is probably the oldest, as the Negritos are the oldest known branch of the human race. Negro comes from the Niger River, or the river Niger. Niger found its way into Latin, and since the people from that region were dark-skinned, Niger, Nigra, Nigrum came to mean black. Negro, Negrito, Negrita means the people of the great river. Black and colored, like white, are on the other hand European words. Ethiopian and Moor were popularly used to describe the so-called blacks until 1500. Shakespeare uses Negro only once and uses it synonymously with Moor. Page 48. Black and colored, on the other hand, have no historic meaning whatsoever for African peoples. Black from the Anglo-Saxon Blake has most horrible meanings. Colored is related to the Latin celare, to conceal, to color up, to paint a thing other than its true light. Thus the tendency to decry Negro on the grounds that it means slavery is sheer ignorance. For instance, a Negro newspaper took a poll of its readers some years ago, and they chose colored. Did they choose colored so as to be in line with the Jim Crow policy? Another very racial group chooses black, which, as was said, is positively a white man's word. Of course, there's only one race, the human race, but of all the names used by the stronger group in America to set the dark-skinned citizen apart, Negro is the least objectionable. I'm gonna have to disagree with a few things that Brother Rogers said. He said that Negro is one of the oldest words because it comes from the river Niger, and the Negritos or Negritas are some of the oldest people on the planet. Maybe the Negritos or the so-called pygmies are the most ancient peoples, but I can guarantee you that they wasn't calling themselves Negritos. Like I said in part 1, Negrito is a Spanish diminutive word and a racial and taxonomic classification, a word created by the Eurozoid, the European. Those people go by their cultural and ethnic names. They don't call themselves Negritos. The European called them that. And I comprehend the perspective J.A. Rogers is coming from. He says that out of all the names for dark-skinned peoples in America, the word Negro is the least objectionable. And this is because J.A. Rogers lived in a time, like I also mentioned, when we hated the word black and Negro was socially acceptable. J.A. Rogers was born before the 1900s, and he died before we started being black and proud of it, if you know what I mean. And Mr. Rogers is also coming from the perspective that Negrito and Negro are bastardized forms of ancient words, like Niger, of course, Netir, Netgir, words like Naga or Naga, Enga or Enija, Negus. And the European corrupted and perverted these ancient words into Negro, Nigger, and Negrito. You know what I'm saying? Some Moors may disagree. It is what it is, but some Moors do agree with this, like Alim Bey and Yafa Bey, who both broke down the origin of the N-word. But in the very least, J.A. Rogers knows without a doubt that the word black cannot be traced back to any indigenous word, and it is purely European in origin and has no historical importance to any original people on the planet. Now I'm going to speak about some alternatives to the word black and why referring to that color is blasphemy and is disrespectful to what it represents. Because I know that color that we've been taught to call black is sacred to us, but we got to stop calling it black because it's not black. And the best alternatives I can give you is simply to use the words themselves, the words that actually can be traced back to indigenous cultures. Kemet or Kim does not translate to mean black because black means pale, blonde, bleached, blank, and albino. Kim does not mean black. Kim means Kim. Kemet does not mean the black land, it means the Kim land. Right? It's blasphemous to continue saying that Kemet means black or Kim means black when we can show and prove that black means pale skinned and blonde, the European, the albino, the Albion. Like I said, use original words that have ancient and indigenous origins. Instead of saying black, just simply say Kim. On Yafa Bey's website, someone asked an important question. They asked, if black means pale, etc., then what color would you say my hair is? I thought it was the black as I've known it. Also, what color is charcoal, carbon, melanin, and night skies, right? An important question because we got to stop seeing that color as black. And I read through the article, and Yafa brought up the word ebony as being an alternative to black, right? And it's such a simple word, but I did my research and found out that the word ebony or hebony is actually an ancient word that can be traced back to ancient Egypt and even has a hieroglyph, unlike the word black, right? I'm trying to figure out why did we ever stop using the word ebony to describe our skin tones, right? We used it all the time, like 70s, 80s, and all that. Google Images, just simply type in the word ebony with a capital E and look what pops up, right? Look at the pictures. Ebony is already synonymous with our skin tones, right? The word ebony has not been corrupted like Niger has or Naga has. It has an ancient and indigenous origin. It can actually be traced back to Kemet, unlike black. And not to mention, ebony comes in different shades as well. Light tannish brown, reddish brown, and that deep dark carbon color like the night sky. You know what I'm saying? Look at the different shades of ebony wood. So instead of saying Kemet means land of the blacks, please start saying Kemet means land of the ebonies, right? Or, in my opinion, ebony is such a beautiful word. No, it's just in my opinion. Black itself is a hideous word, you know what I'm saying? Just listen to how it sounds. Black, bleached, blonde, blank. Instead of saying RBG, red, black, and green, start saying REG, red, ebony, and green, right? Instead of saying Black Panther, say Ebony Panther. It's simple. You know what I'm saying? What excuse do you have to still use the word black in any way or format, any context? You have no reason to keep using such a disgusting word that has no indigenous origin, cannot be traced back to Africa. You know what I'm saying? It's purely a European word. You have no reason to use it still. And like I said, that color has existed long before the word black, and the ancestors didn't call it black. I'm saying use the words they use. Let's touch on how this color was used in its proper context as a simple representation of dark skin and its metaphysical and soulful purposes, right? I want to use the wall paintings from ancient Egypt, the so-called 4 races of man. You know what I'm saying? Do your research. These are not called the races of man. These are called tables of nations. They have nothing to do with race. But you have the table of nations from the tomb of Seti or Sethos at the bottom, and the one from the tomb of Ramses or Ramesu at the top. You will find out that a lot of albinos or albinoids, Europeans, they like to use the bottom image in race debates to say that the ancient Egyptians depicted themselves as brown, while always depicting Nubians or Nehesi or Nehesu as being that deep ebony pitch color. Right? The Albions want to say that the Egyptians seen themselves as being a different race from the Nubians, but you can easily debunk that by pulling up other wall paintings that clearly show that the Nubians were also painted as light brown along with that deep ebony color, which represents the true diversity of skin tones. Even Nubians depicted themselves as brown in the tombs of Queen Kalhata and Tatamani, who were both Nubians, they clearly chose to depict themselves as being brown. And what people must comprehend about that pitch midnight ebony color is that it is simply a representation of the darkest Nubians, just like how I said it was a representation of the darkest Moors. Right? It would be hard for you to find someone who is that midnight ebony color. We use it to depict ourselves on Greek vases as well, but it's only a close representation, right? Something interesting about the image of Mentuhotep is that a lot of Afrocentrists have been using this image in the race wars to prove that the ancient Egyptians were so-called blacks, right? They love this image because they believe that color is that color of his skin is a true representation of what his skin tone was. I don't know if anyone has pointed this out yet, but that's not a representation of his skin tone, right? Take a close look at how his arms are arranged, right? Do the configuration of his arms look familiar to you? It's because he's deceased and he's being depicted as Asar, Lord of the Dead. He has passed on to the afterlife, right? In reality, his true skin tone was brown. That statue of him that people love to use, the reason why his skin is painted as that pitch ebony color is because that color represents death. But remember, it's only physical death, because the ancestors knew that your soul lived forever in the afterlife. Death was life to them. I've even seen Afrocentrists use this image of King Tut in the race debates with Europeans, as well, as if it's supposed to represent his true skin tone or something. I don't even know why people attempt to use this image. King Tut's true skin tone was brown, just like Mentuhotep's. The statue of Tut is painted that color because it represents physical death and everlasting life. It's a funerary statue, just like Mentuhotep's. They have both returned to the triple stage darkness, or the primordial waters anew, for eternal life. And to go along with that, I also want to speak about the so-called black Madonnas, right? I don't want to offend any Hebrews or anyone who believes that this is a true depiction of Mary and the infant Christ, but that is a metaphysical or soulful principle and not a literal one. Just like the midnight ebony color of King Tut and Mentuhotep statues, that color represents the primordial waters of Nu, triple stage darkness, Ain Sof R, the deep darkness of the cosmos and the universe. It represents the beginning and the end of all life and all creation. It represents death, which is a gateway to everlasting life, right? That color is not a skin tone. That's why I said I would give you alternatives to the word black, because that color we ignorantly call black isn't black or blackness. It's blasphemy every time you use the word black to describe that color. Every time you use the word black, you contaminate and you pollute and you desecrate these ancient principles. Every time you call Asar or Osiris Lord of the Perfect Black, you have just disrespected Asar and what Asar represents. Every time you look up in the night sky and you say that's blackness, you have just disrespected the primordial mother and everything in existence. Call that what the ancestors called it, Nu or Nunet. You know what I'm saying? That's not blackness. And I love wearing that color because that's what it represents to me. It represents the Most High. It represents power. That's why I refuse to call it black, because I cherish that color and what it represents to us. And I was waiting to this video to speak about the word Sudan. How Sudan supposedly means land of the blacks, just like Guinea and Kemet. You know what I'm saying? I already discussed the origin of Guinea. But in all of my research, Sudan or Bilad al-Sudan or Asud is indeed referring to that color. But like I just discussed, this is one of those attempts by these people who love the word black. This is their attempt to say black is a country or a nationality. But if I can prove to you that the word black is an adjective that is referring to having pale skin, do you really believe that black is a proper translation for the word Asud or Sudan? And why would you see this as an excuse to use the word black anyway? You know what I'm saying? Like I said, you don't see black on the map, you see Sudan. The guy Tunji Legba brought this up to me, and he even asked me, what does the so-called black color represent in the Sudanese or Kenyan flag? He said it represents the people of Kenya and Sudan. My response to anyone who says this, I would simply tell you that that color does represent the people. It does. But it is not black, because black means pale, bleached, blonde, etc. And this is the whole point. If it wasn't for us being able to prove that black means pale skin, we would have no arguments. If black wasn't a contradiction and only had one definition, the one that we are taught about, we wouldn't have much of an argument against the word. But since we can prove that black means pale, bleached, blonde, blank, albino, the European, none of you Afrocentrists who love using this word, you have no arguments to continue using that word black. Now I'm going to move on to the basic psychology of why people choose to call themselves blacks. I assume that most people who are watching this video have a basic comprehension of how the mind works, but I'm going to quickly review it just to set the foundation. Nothing too deep, just basic stuff. We have the conscious mind and the subconscious. Some people will say that you have three, including the superconscious, but I'm going to just stick with the conscious and subconscious just to keep it simple. Right, we all know the conscious mind is, of course, the waking mind and the active mind, whereas the subconscious is the part that is subtle and hidden. The conscious mind is the active mind and can only perceive what is logical and tangible, only has short-term memory. The subconscious mind controls all of your behaviors, addictions. It holds all of your long-term memories and is the mind that visualizes, it dreams, and it feels emotions. The subconscious deals with belief systems, emotions, emotional attachments, identity, cultural paradigms, protection patterns, or defense mechanisms, right? The conscious mind is the analytical, rational mind, but it will always be overpowered by the subconscious because beliefs and emotions will always overpower logic, always. And the conscious mind is supposed to filter what enters the subconscious mind, but most people have no control over what enters their mind at all. So if you aren't programming your subconscious, someone else would do it for you. I just want to speak about the basic process of learning and how we program the subconscious in long-term memory. To learn anything, you must be able to remember it. And the only way to truly remember is to imprint that information into the subconscious or long-term memory. So for instance, let's use language and words just to keep it simple. When reading a book or if someone is telling you a story, to be able to comprehend what is going on in that story, your mind must be able to attach visual images to each word and play those images like a mental movie while you're reading or listening to the story, right? When someone tells you the big green man was angry, your subconscious mind automatically visualizes a man, which is a noun. The man is big, the man is green, and the man is also angry. Your mind visualizes a man and is also able to simultaneously visualize the adjectives that describe the man. Now, if someone said that same sentence in Spanish, El gran hombre verde estaba enojado, right? Your mind would draw a blank because your mind is not able to attach visual images to those words because it does not comprehend the language and isn't able to translate it into English, right? Now, when learning Spanish for the first time and the teacher told you what that sentence translated to mean, you would automatically be able to visualize the man and his adjectives because your subconscious can attach a visual image to the translation. Therefore, for a short time, the mind will be able to attach a visual image to the Spanish sentence as well. But it's only held within the conscious mind and short-term memory. If she speaks to you, or if she asks you next week or even 3 days later, what does El gran hombre verde estaba enojado mean? If those words and their definitions aren't encoded into the long-term memory, the subconscious mind will not be able to attach the visual image to the words. Therefore, the conscious mind will not be able to retrieve any information or translate the sentence. And it's not because the subconscious mind isn't able to remember, it's because your conscious mind is the part that is supposed to do all of the remembering or reassembling of information, and the conscious mind just isn't able to retrieve the information and reassemble it into something that is tangible, right? The subconscious mind never forgets. What I'm getting at is, in order to program the subconscious or long-term memory to the point where you can consciously retrieve that info, you must use repetition and visualization. In order for a word to be implanted into the subconscious or long-term memory, you must repeatedly visualize it, the noun, and attach the word to it simultaneously by subvocalizing. After a short while, you will be able to consciously retrieve and reassemble these words, and your subconscious will automatically visualize a big green man who is angry, right? And you are constantly reinforcing and telling your subconscious mind that this information is important each time you study it. Therefore, remember this. This is how you learn any word. Of course, you gotta learn parts of speech, how to structure sentences, but this is just a simplistic explanation that's gonna help me discuss the word black, right? If you were to teach a child or anyone who is learning the English language, if you taught them the true definition of black, that black means pale, bleached, their subconscious will never believe that black equals the darkest color possible, like the color of carbon, the night sky, nor will they make the mistake of believing it was an identity or that it can describe a person with brown skin. Let me reiterate what the subconscious mind deals with. It deals with belief systems, emotions and emotional attachment, cultural paradigms, protective patterns, or defense mechanisms, and it does not deal with logic and can completely override logic. Let's look at Morpheus for a moment. So all of our lives since we were young, we were taught that the color of Morpheus's jacket is black. Year after year, day after day, we were taught repetitively to call that color black. And we have been so dumbed down that we were taught to believe that Morpheus himself is also black, even though logically you can clearly see that his skin is brown and his skin tone is nowhere near the color of the leather coat. But remember, the subconscious doesn't deal with logic. It only deals with beliefs and can override logic, right? How do you override logic? You override logic with emotions and repetition. All of these years, the sound, the pronunciation, the spelling of the word black has been embedded into the subconscious along with the color of Morpheus's jacket, to the point where as soon as someone utters the word black, you automatically visualize the color of the coat. And if someone says black man, you visualize Morpheus himself. Identities and emotional attachments. Since birth, our subconscious mind has been programmed to believe that this color is black. And you have been taught that your identity is being a black person, right? Pay close attention. Those in the conscious community have been, for many years, have been repeating or repetitively saying these mantras and these affirmations, right? Kemet means black. The ancient Egyptians were black. Mor means black. Osiris is Lord of the perfect black. Jesus or Yeshua is black. The black woman is God. The black man is God. God is black. Other affirmations that involve emotions and identities include black power, black African power, black love, black unity. So after years of repeating these mantras to the subconscious mind, you have permanently attached and binded the word black to the words God, Kemet, Mor, Osiris, Yeshua, power, unity, and love, to the point where black is synonymous with these words. Each time you hear or say the word black, the subconscious mind produces an image of God, Asar, Yeshua, Kemet, and it feels the emotions of power, love, and unity. You have successfully made emotional attachments, and your subconscious mind will defend these identities at all costs. When Moors say that we are not blacks, the subconscious mind sees this as an attack on God and all of the other identities and emotions, because the subconscious mind believes that God and black are one and the same thing. When someone attacks the word black, you see that as an attack on God. When someone says we are not blacks, you see that as an attack on Kemet. When someone gives you proof and logical evidence that the true definition of black means pale, blonde, blank, your conscious mind knows that that's the truth because you can tangibly see it and prove it. But the subconscious mind does not deal with truth or logic. The subconscious mind's belief systems and emotional attachments to the word, the spelling, the pronunciation of the word black will override this logic each and every time. Since you believe that you are black, you will forever be emotionally attached to that 5-letter word, B-L-A-C-K, right? Defense mechanisms. You will deny all evidence that you feel is an attack on the word black because you feel that is your identity. This is why people say things like fuck the white man's dictionary, because you see the dictionary as a threat to the word black. Therefore, the dictionary is an attack on your identity of being black. And an attack on the word black is an attack on the black woman and the black man. Even though the word black is Germanic and European and is not indigenous to any part of Africa, Even though we can go back in time when we hated the word black before the 70s, even though I can prove that the word black is a brand given to you by the European, you will make rationalizations that allow you to keep using the word black by saying Kemet means black, Moor means black, Bilad al-Sudan means black, Guinea means black, therefore reinforcing and affirming to the subconscious mind that Kemet and black is one and the same thing, even though the word black cannot be found in any hieroglyph, right? Kemet may mean land of the ebony people. Kemet does not mean land of the black people, because land of the black people means land of the pale-skinned people, i.e. the European. You will attack anyone and anything that you see as an attack on the word black in your belief that this 5-letter European and Germanic word is an identity. You will attack the Moors and anyone who says we are not blacks. The only way to overcome this false identity is to detach and disassociate all emotions and images from the word black. When repeating affirmations, you must never use negatives such as I am not black, I am not black, because the subconscious only picks up on the I am and black. Therefore it hears I am black and defeats the purpose. Every time someone mentions the word black, you must detach the word black from that color, that image. When someone says the word black, you must automatically visualize and attach that word black. Just imagine a European or the twins from the Matrix, right? Just visualize the twins from the Matrix and just repetitively attach the word black to them. Do this repetitively and constantly affirm and reinforce to the subconscious mind that black means pale, blonde, blank, and while visualizing the European or the twins from the Matrix, do this constantly, and eventually your subconscious mind will disassociate from the word black. It will no longer be emotionally attached to the word black. I want to go to an audio clip to prove how some of these defense mechanisms are deployed by these Afrocentrists and these people who perpetuate that we are Africans and blacks, right? Now listen very closely to how Cyrus Seti rationalizes that we are still Africans.
If you want to live in America, I'm all right with that. Africans came here, I'm not debating that. But they always had the ability to go back home. They knew if they couldn't get it right, they could go back home. If you want to live in America, I'm all right with that. Africans came here, I'm not debating that. But they always had the ability to go back home. They knew if they couldn't get it right, they could go back home. Africans came here, I'm not debating that. Africans came here, I'm not debating that. But they always had the ability to go back home. But they always had the ability to go back home. But they always had the ability to go back home. To go back home. To go back home. They knew if they couldn't get it right, they could go back home. They knew if they couldn't get it right, they could go back home. They knew if they couldn't get it right, they could go back home. They could go back home. They could go back home.
So this guy says he's not debating that we were already over here, right? So there's nothing to debate. But did you catch how he rationalized how we were still slaves from West Africa? Now keep in mind that rationalization is a psychological defense mechanism. Logically, he knows that we were already over here for thousands of years before slavery, but his subconscious mind is incapable of accepting that he's not an African. He has created emotional attachments to the story of slavery and emotional attachments to Africa. Therefore, his subconscious mind overrides logic and creates a story that allows him to run back to Africa. And this story that his subconscious mind creates is that for some reason Olmec decided to go back home because they knew they couldn't get something. They knew they couldn't get something right. Right? My question is, what couldn't they get right? So he has convinced himself that the only way that the great and almighty Olmec could get back over here to the Americas was at the bottom of a slave ship packed 400 deep, pissing and shitting on themselves, right? In Seti's mind, this story makes sense to him because he is not a logical individual. He deals with beliefs and emotions only. And if he truly believes that the Olmec went back to Africa, how come none of these other so-called Africans and so-called black people never went back to Africa? How come the Jarawa, the Tasmanians, the Papua New Guineans, the Semang, all of the peoples of Asia and Australia, why didn't none of these people go back to Africa? because his subconscious mind is incapable of accepting that his lineage is on this continent and not in West Africa. He has binded himself to West Africa and will forever be emotionally attached to it, right? He can look at all of these millions and millions of so-called African Americans, and he can't figure out that these are the descendants of the Olmecs and the Mayans, not slaves from West Africa, right? We never went back to anywhere. We've been here. He denies all evidence that we were already here because it attacks his identity as an African. And yes, slavery did happen, right? There's no denying that, but I want to bring up some of these logical questions and points that have been made before in the past that debunk these inflated statistics about the transatlantic slave trade. I'm saying, first of all, the numbers of Africans who they said they brought over here is inconsistent, first and foremost. You have many people who for years have said that anywhere from 60 to 100 million Africans were enslaved. Sarasutin Seti has said this on many occasions. Now they are saying anywhere from 10 to 12 million slaves were brought to the Americas, which is another inconsistency. Between 10 and 12 million, there is a gap of 2 million people. That's a huge gap in inconsistency, right? 2 million people is not something that goes unaccounted for. Watch a video titled Transatlantic Slave Trade and American Deception by a dude named True Set Us Free Today. And you will find out that the amount of people who were brought over here is only a very minuscule fraction and percentage of what we were told who were brought over here in school and all that. I'm saying all of those millions of people who they said were brought over here were already over here for thousands of years. And of course we already know that the slave narrative of roots was fake and Alex Haley plagiarized it. Come to find out, the slave fort known as Goree Island was also a fake, just like many of these so-called slave forts that were nothing more than regular forts. And some more basic questions that these Pan-Africans have yet to answer. How did the ships carry enough food and water for 200 plus slaves plus the crew? You know what I'm saying? They couldn't desalinate seawater back then, and they had no refrigeration. How did slaves survive such unsanitary conditions for 2 months or more, with their skin bare and exposed, laying in human feces, urine, blood, vomit? And when they were given food and water, how did they keep the food and water from being contaminated by human waste when they ate it? How did the slave ships make voyages during hurricane season, which is approximately 6 months long, half the year? How did they survive such dangerous conditions with so much weight on a ship? The subject of piracy, right? Piracy was very prevalent in the 1600s to 1800s. How did you defend such valuable and priceless human cargo from pirates attempting to steal that human cargo? Were the crew members trained in combat? Did you have cannons on the ship? Many of those cannons that were on board of 17th and 18th century ships weighed over 3,000 pounds each. How does a slave ship carry the weight of the slaves plus the weight of the food and water needed to feed 200 plus slaves, or 200 to 400 slaves and crew members, plus the weight of multiple iron cannons that weigh over 3,000 pounds each, plus the weight of the ammunition needed for those cannons? I'm saying, do you not realize that a malnutritioned and abused slave is worth nothing when they go to the auction block? Why would you spend hundreds to thousands of dollars on a slave that is diseased, malnourished, and has been abused and injured, and expect them to do hard labor for years? They would be worthless, right? That's like a what is it called, a jockey buying a diseased and abused horse that is malnourished and expects it to win races with such a horse. And like I said, yes, slavery did happen, but it's not like how you were taught in school. What I find very interesting is how these Afrocentrists want to continuously play the victim role, right? It's funny how they love saying that the white man is the devil and the white man enslaved us, but they conveniently gloss over the fact that the so-called white man was being enslaved right along with us, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of Europeans were being enslaved and put into bondage, but you never hear about these Afrocentrists talk about it because they want to play the victim role. We enslaved Europeans. Europeans enslaved other Europeans, right? We wasn't the only victims of this. And Afrocentrists always gloss over this fact, and they attempt to rationalize this point right here. I can't tell you how many times Afrocentrists try to spin a story when a European says that Africans were enslaving other Africans, right? Afrocentrists just brush it off by saying, well, it wasn't the same as chattel slavery. It was only a form of indentured servitude. You know what I'm saying? That's bullshit. Africans were enslaving other Africans as prisoners of war and to sell them as slaves. Africans, Moors, Barbary pirates, Barbary corsairs were enslaving Europeans. Nobody was completely innocent. Europeans were being auctioned off right alongside Africans. The reason why they say Africans didn't enslave each other as chattel is because they want to play the victim role and pretend like Africans could do no wrong. These are all questions that these Afrocentrists have a hard time answering because their subconscious mind is polluted and they want to hold on to the belief that they were Africans. And I have nothing but love for the peoples of Africa, like I said before, and I do consider those to be my people, just like all original and indigenous people of the planet. We inhabited all continents, not just Africa. We inhabited the Americas, Europe, Australia, Asia, of course. And with that, I'm going to end the video. Like I said, I'm going to be proving how the Moors were a part of all ancient cultures and how African American DNA is BS. I'm going to try to have those videos out within the next couple of weeks. And thanks for watching, and peace to you all. Thanks.